Hi, Michelle. Hi, Drea. Hi, A. Thank you for the blue hearts, everybody. I appreciate that. All right. Today, I am going to be talking about medical terminology study tips. Hi, Pamela. Thank you all for joining me. Okay. After the show, I'm going to update the description box, and it's going to have all the links to all the things that I'm going to be talking about in tonight's episode. So when you see the thumbnail updated, you'll know that it's updated. So right now it just has my default statement in there. So hi, Sarah. Hi, Aurora. Hi, Tracy. Thank you all for joining me. Like I said, we're going to be talking about medical terminology. Hi, Hannah. Thank you for the blue hearts. Yay, Drea. Congratulations. I passed my CPC. I got my results today. That's awesome. Hi, Maria. Thank you for joining me. Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for the blue hearts. Yeah, that is so awesome. I'm so happy for you. That is amazing. I know you're very happy to be done with your courses. Now the real work begins, right? It's going to be about looking for a job if you haven't already gotten a job already. Pamela says, hey, I've got a question. When you apply for a job and you have to take their test, what does it consist of? They told me I have to make an 80%. I'll get to that. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Tonight, I am going to be talking about medical terminology study tips. And I'm going to be leaving some links to the resources in the description box below. So please make sure that you check out the description box. It will be updated after the show. And once you see the thumbnail updated to a regular thumbnail, then you'll know that the description box is updated, so that way you can get all the resources there. My contact information is there right now because I have my default disclaimer template in the description box right now. So if you are interested in contacting me for resume reviews, for medical coding tutoring, you can find my email address in the description box below. That is how you reach me, so that we can go ahead and book that once you are ready. So, hi, Christina. All right, medical terminology. My biggest tips when it comes to learning medical terminology is this. A lot of people, especially brand new medical coding students, this is one of the very first things that you learn when you become a medical coder, which is medical terminology and anatomy. This is actually the part where a lot of people get frustrated and want to quit. And if you're one of those and you want to quit this early in the game, there is so much more that you're going to be up against later. That you need to kind of reserve your wanting to quit until later on, because right now you should be as excited as you possibly can. This is a new thing. This is a very exciting step into your future. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you learn. And you have to learn medical terminology and anatomy. A lot of people will ask me, why is this important? I just want to be a medical coder. Well, what do you think you're going to be reading all day? Medical terms. Medical terms and a few filler words. So with that, you want to make sure that you are getting a good foundation now. I tell people when they're learning medical terminology is to learn the basics. Learn your prefixes, your suffixes, and your root words. Do not try to overwhelm yourself trying to learn whole medical terms. You will learn those with time. And the best way to start piecing together medical terms is to break it down with the prefixes and suffixes and root words. So once you know those, it's going to be a lot easier to get in there and understand what's actually happening. And your medical terminology vocabulary will triple and quadruple before you know it, because you'll be able to recognize a lot of these words. Christina says, Career Step told me not to memorize, that it will all connect once you start coding and doing the practicum. Okay, so let's put Career Step aside. I am telling you guys these things as tips from me to you. This is how I learned, and I think I'm a pretty good coder. So with that said, what you hear at your school is one thing, and I understand it's part of their school, it's part of their curriculum, whatever. But schools are going to test you, and they're not going to test you, they're going to teach you differently. Some schools will push that critical thinking, and others will not. They're here to collect a check and go home. These schools are for-profit schools. So you have to keep that in mind, that they're not always interested in your best interest, okay, and how best to learn. So when you come here to my channel is about learning the old-fashioned way, learning from the ground up, and not trying to do those little shortcuts. So if you're coming here trying to learn shortcuts, you're in the wrong place, because that's not what I do, okay? I go all the way. If you're gonna do anything, you may as well do it right. And when it comes to medical coding and learning how to do medical coding, I want to teach it the right way. I want to share what I know the correct way. So when I'm telling you guys to work on learning your medical terminology with the prefixes, suffixes, and root words, I mean just that. Learn those. And sometimes you have to kind of put aside what your school is trying to teach you, because again, they're not always interested in your best interest. So if you can kind of open your mind to other things, so that way that you can learn, it's going to make it a lot easier. Because sometimes people will say, oh yeah, well wait till you get into the coding, it's going to make a lot more sense. Okay, do you know what arthrocentesis is? Does anybody know what arthrodesis is? Can anybody tell me what arthrodesis is without looking it up? Waiting. Can anybody tell me what that is? Crickets. That's what I got right now, is crickets. Arthrodesis is a fusion. Arthrocentesis is like when you're doing an injection into a joint. Arthro, meaning joint, okay? And then the centesis part is the, yeah. So you have to kind of think and get creative with how you're learning. For me, when I learned to break down these words, it made things a lot more quicker. My most favorite subject in school was medical terminology and anatomy. And I'm going to be leaving the Amazon affiliate links. You don't have to click on those links, because I may get a percentage if you click on them. But you don't have to. I always leave the title there, or whatever it is. So if you're interested. But I do recommend putting up posters like for anatomy around, so that you have it in front of you. And one of the sites that I ran across when, thank you, Drea. One of the sites that I ran across, because the great thing about YouTube is that there are tons and tons, and there's a wealth of information when it comes to YouTube and learning medical terminology. And if you say, well, Blue, I'm tired of looking at the book, congratulations, there's YouTube. And YouTube, again, has plenty of sites that are dedicated to learning medical terminology, or learning about disease processes, or learning about diseases. And because of this, JJ Medicine, who I'm going to be leaving the link for their YouTube channel in the description box below, they do have a few videos about medical terminology, and he says the same thing in those videos that I've been telling you guys, which is break down the terms. You break it down, because medical terminology is made up of Latin and Greek words. I was trying to think of it for a second there. But Latin and Greek words. So when you think about it, you really have to break things down. If you don't know Latin or Greek, it's okay. You don't have to, but you can learn the little parts of the words so that you can piece them together. And he has a really good video about that. And he's actually got a series of videos. But not only that, when I looked at his page, and I say he because it was a guy speaking, so I don't know, it could be a lady, it could be a bunch of people. But when I looked at their channel, they have lots of videos about somatic symptom disorder. They have eye floaters, tendinitis, memory, short-term and long-term. They talk about these things. The big 5 personality traits, migraine headaches overview, restless leg syndrome, neuralgia, and then high morning glucose, dawn phenomenon, and the Samaji effect. So they have lots of different things, lots of different conditions that they talk about on this website. And for you folks that like your little short videos, they have 5-minute videos, they have 10-minute, 11-minute videos. So these are very quick. I know everybody likes to do the little quick thing, the little TikTok type deal. I'm not on TikTok for a reason, okay? I don't do things quick. And with these videos, they're nice little bite-sized chunks. You can listen to these on your way to work, or when you're coming home from work, or when you're eating your lunch, or when you're taking your breaks at work. Because if you're like me, I get 2 15-minute breaks at work. And so that's a half an hour. And, you know, I have less than a half an hour drive, but I'm just saying for quick thought, okay? If you have a half an hour drive to work and you have a half an hour drive home, that's an hour, right? And then if you have 2 15-minute breaks, that's another half an hour. So now you got an hour and a half. If you have 30 minutes for lunch, that's 2 hours that you could be studying. And just listening to a channel like JJ Medicine is a great way to go, because you don't even have to be looking at anything. You can be listening to it. Yes, does it have a great little illustration video? Yes, of course. But you can always listen to it. You don't necessarily have to be watching it. Just like my videos, you can listen to them too. You don't necessarily have to watch them, but it's got so many things. And if you ask, well, Blue, why do I have to know about anemia? Why do I have to know about meningitis and colitis and things like that? When you're working in the clinic, you're going to have to know this stuff. And you don't have to know it in complete detail, but you need to have an idea of what are the symptoms. What kind of things does this cause? How do these things come about? They talk about the signs and symptoms of these conditions, which is really great because, you know, in the outpatient setting, we're not going to be picking up the signs and symptoms when there's a definitive diagnosis. So learning these things, taking the time to look at channels like this, and all of their videos, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 16 minutes, 7 minutes, 13 minutes. I mean, it's amazing. And if I was a student, I would be on this like white on rice. I really would. And as a matter of fact, I'm probably going to go ahead and review this myself, because it always is good to make sure that you are staying on top of not just your own specialty, but other specialties as well. You know, I want to be able to get to a point where in the future, I'm going to be an instructor. That's one of my goals. And so to be able to effectively teach something like medical coding, having that background knowledge of not just the specialty that I like, which is ortho and podiatry, but being able to talk about anything would be really good, because I would never want to be in a position where I'm teaching and I'm not really strong in something. So that's why I would love to learn more about that. And it's just a great thing to listen to. I do read the New England Journal of Medicine. Now, when you read things like this, these words, you're going to see the medical terminology in action, right? You're going to see it in action, and there's going to be some things that are going to go over your head. Not going to lie. It goes over my head plenty of times, but I don't let that stop me from reading it, because eventually, not everything, but a lot of things have started to make sense the more that I read. And listening to the doctors when they speak about surgeries, and then recalling the things that I've read and all the medical terms there, because even if I can't pronounce it, I hear somebody else pronounce it, I'm like, that's how you say it. So it's a combined effort when you're learning medical terminology. It's not just about the flashcards, it's not just about the reading, it's about listening. And when you start listening to things like this, and listening to other medical professionals and how they pronounce these words, it's going to help you so much. The best thing that you can do is invest time in this while you can. And this is one of those things that can go on autopilot. You can just listen. People, well, I don't have time for that. But you see them online or on Facebook or on TikTok making these videos. The time that you're making those 10-minute, 15-minute videos or whatever that it takes for you to make that video, you could have been listening to something like this. And the studying right now is intense for medical terminology, yes, because you're learning parts of the words and you're doing all that. but it's just this time. It's just so that you can get that foundation and grow from there, not so that you do it all the time that you're going to burn yourself out. We have to know what doctors know while never having gone to medical school. That is my favorite saying. And I've said it originally. I said it. And because it's true when you think about it. We have to be able to read and comprehend this documentation. It's not just about reading it and then, oh, you're going to put it into an encoder and then you'll be able to go on from there because the doctor's already selected their codes. Sometimes the doctor doesn't always select the appropriate code, or they select codes that are not supported in the documentation because they think that maybe selecting it through whatever electronic health record is appropriate enough. And that's not true. Just because they select a diagnosis and they don't talk about it, they don't say anything about it, doesn't mean that that diagnosis is actually supported. So knowing your medical terminology, you're going to be able to pick that up. Because when you see things like degenerative, you know that you're going to be able to associate that with certain conditions. And oh yeah, that's what they're talking about. So take the time and learn these things. I have my Patreon channel, and I will plug my Patreon channel for a moment. Because I do have word puzzles that I do. I make crossword puzzles for medical terminology as well as anatomy, and I've done a prefixes, suffixes, root words crossword puzzle as well. So if you're interested in something like that, that is on my Patreon channel. Patreon is a lot like YouTube, except you pay to support the creator, which would be me. Right now, the minimum pledge is $10, but you get access to all that and all of the past crossword puzzles that I've posted, not to mention all the other worksheets and exercises that I come up with on the channel. And I do critical thinking, which is just basically a scenario, and then you come up with the diagnosis, the E&M, you know, any of the procedure codes that apply. So it really is, it's a really good study tool if you're interested in that. But I have found that doing medical terminology crossword puzzles helped me to learn medical terminology. When I was in school, that's what my mom did. So I got this from her. She actually took my book and she got all of the words and she made it into a puzzle for me. So that was how I was able to learn it. And that's what I'm doing now for you all. So if you sign up on my Patreon channel. But I saw a lot of comments come in, so let me get to that. Hi, Mitney. Guy, Blue, hello there, was once told that the simplest jargon word is simply the word disease, as experience dis-ease. That's funny, I like that. Christina, I think E&M is finally clicking. Good. You would be an amazing instructor, Blue. Thank you. Tracy, I would take some of my neurosurgeon's journals from his office to get a better understanding. That's perfect, because what better resource, right? You're actually getting a resource from them and what they're looking at and what they read. And that's the best thing about these journals is these journals are written by other doctors talking to other doctors. So they're going to change the way that they say things, and they're going to change the way they speak in the vernacular that they use, because they're speaking to their colleagues. They don't have to speak. They're not speaking to patients. They're not speaking to a coder. They're speaking to each other, so they can speak differently. Dr. George, who is a pseudonym, okay? That's not technically his name. But Dr. George once told me that, and he's a provider that I worked with a while ago, but Dr. George once told me, Blue, you know, when you speak, I understand what you're saying because I get it. I get what you're trying to tell me. He goes, for some of the other surgeons, they don't understand because to them, you're speaking medical coder. So it's better if we do a thing like where I'm translating. I said, you're saying exactly the same thing. And I said, and I've seen you do that to me before. He goes, yeah. So he goes, as you speak, then I say the same thing, but they get it because he says it in a way that they understand. And it's much more advanced, but he's saying exactly the same thing that I am. You know, he just used bigger words. Okay. All right. You know, that's fine. You know, so, but that's what happens. So when you get into that mindset of the doctor, right, by reading those journals, it does help. My speech with them has gotten a lot better because of that. And sometimes I think when I'm explaining things, I have to go to the simplest level, because they even tell me that, Blue, break it down in the simplest level. And I'm like, okay. So I do that, and I think, okay, well, that was something that, I mean, they should get it, right? But it wasn't until Dr. George showed me what he was doing, I was like, oh, you know. So when you are reading those things, it's always good. Put yourself in those positions where you're learning from who you're working with, right? Because then you can learn and you'll start to speak like them. I know a lot of times when I get off camera and I'm with my surgeons, my speech gets a lot different. It does get a lot different from the way that I am with you guys, because I've learned to speak with them and using the medical terms. And yes, there are some words that I still get flubbed up on. For many years, I said olecranon when it was olecranon. And I said, what was it? Sebaceous. I was saying sebiscus. Don't ask me why. That was when I was a brand new medical coder. I just had so many words in front of me. I was like, okay, this is too much. And I said sebiscus, but it's actually sebaceous. What was the other word I said? Adipose is the word, right? Which is fatty, you know. But I said adipose, and one of my PAs, he said, actually, Blue, it's adipose. I said, it's actually adipose. But we were playing, you know, and he was like, he's like, you always said, I was like, well, I guess I added a letter in there. I don't know. And he's like, yeah, he goes, medical terminology is always hard. It's not easy to pronounce these words. It is literally speaking a different language. Hannah says, I use Grey's Anatomy for when I can't look at the book anymore. For the first couple of seasons, I love talking doctor, LOL. That's funny, because I always recommend watching House MD, if you ever watch the show. These are actual real life cases that they're talking about. And that's the inspiration for these episodes. And that's how they know how they came up with all these different treatment plans and things like that, and House running around doing all that crazy stuff. But it's true. And so when I learned that, I was like, oh. But a lot of those episodes, they have so much medical terminology. And I love Grey's Anatomy, like the early seasons. But when it comes to actual, like, more about the case than about the drama, House wins out, to me at least, you know. But you know, they come out with some pretty good ones on Grey's Anatomy, but I don't know. I liked House better. Hannah, I love House. I watched that too. Yes. And Tracy, I love House. I love House. I mean, when, like, that last year when the pandemic kicked off, I was like, where is House? We need House. We need Dr. House. There was actually a meme out that said, you know, get this man what he needs. You know, I can't say it on here because they'll, you know, but he's like, yeah, get him and his team so we can get this thing figured out. But yeah. Old seasons of the ER. Yeah. ER is pretty good. Let's see. What was another one? There was another show out. It's a medical show. But when you listen to those medical shows, they do help you with the medical terminology. So that does kind of help you. But you'll start to learn a lot more when you're paying attention. You're not just looking at it for the drama, but you're looking at it for, like, what's actually happening. Oh, what was that one show? Dr. Mike actually recommends one of these drama shows. Oh, I can't think of the name of it, but he actually recommended it because he was like, yeah, this is actually like what would actually happen. Oh, I can't think of the name of it. It's a new one too, and I can't think of the name. If I come across it, I'll leave it in the community tab. Bleu is B-L-E-U. I'm gonna say this every time. B-L-E-U, not blue like the color. Blue like the French spelling, or blue like blue cheese. She says, or he, for the CPC exam, do you need any certification to show them that we learn medical terminology and anatomy? No, you do not need any previous formal training, you just have to pay your fee and then take the test. The Resident, The Good Doctor. I like The Good Doctor the first season. I don't like all this other mishigas they got going on all these other seasons. I stopped watching it. But I really liked the first season because it was really good. I like that. I need to go back to somebody's question. Pamela, I have a question. When you apply for a job and you take their test, what does it consist of? And they told me I have to make an 80%. So for every place, there's going to be a different set of standards, right? For whatever it is that they want to. It's almost next to impossible to be truly prepared for a test that you may get, an assessment test. When I tested here for this position that I got here, well, I only tested once, but I interviewed twice. So when I tested, it was like 50 questions, I think. And it was literally on the fly. So I had to work out like some problems because I had my books with me and they had me look up the codes. They asked me what section of the book certain conditions were in. And so I had to name that. And then they asked me basic medical terms. So there was a lot of things that they had asked. New Amsterdam, thank you. That's the show. That's the show that they were talking about, New Amsterdam. I call your show Blue's Clues. You know, it's funny that you say that, Maximus. There's somebody else in the audience, I'm not going to point you out, but you know who you are, that says Blue's Clues as well. I don't mind Blue's Clues. I thought Blue's Clues was very cute. It's just the spelling, guys. I just need the spelling, you know. Because I used to let it go when people would misspell my name because I get it. You know what I mean? It's an unusual name. But the reason that I make it such a big deal now is because, you know what? I'm talking to future medical coders, or I'm talking to medical coders. If you can't get BLEU correct, you may end up being like, okay, well, I got this code. And then if you transpose those numbers, you either end up with an invalid code or the wrong code. And it is possible sometimes when you transpose numbers, it does happen because our eyes go cross sometimes, you know, if you're working really hard. So this is why I'm trying to get you guys to pay closer attention to detail, because it is all about detail. When you're taking these tests, they're going to look at your detail and see how you are finding these codes. When you're looking things up, are you putting the decimal in the right place? Are you getting to the right code? Are you using a symptom code instead of an actual disease code if it's an actual condition that has been diagnosed? So there's a lot of detail that goes into what we're doing. And sometimes the correct answer is just like that, just a little twist of something. Or you'll see a modifier that is added to something that may be the difference between that answer being correct or incorrect. So that's why I'm telling you guys to please pay attention to detail. My name is all over the place. BLEU, even in the title. Once I update the title of the show, majority of my videos have Medical Coding with Blue in the title. The namesake of the channel is Medical Coding with Blue. So please, guys, make sure that you're paying attention to that. Thank you. I appreciate that. But yes, so getting back to what I was talking about with the tests. So it could be anything. You really do have to be prepared for just about anything. It's like when you're preparing for the certification exam, right? Except a lot of times maybe you're not on the clock as far as like, okay, you need to have this done in so much time. When I worked at home many years ago, I did work remotely for a level 1 trauma hospital, which was a nice experience. That I called the Marine Corps book, the Marine Corps medical coding, because you literally saw everything. You saw level 1 traumas, and some of that stuff was pretty gnarly. And when you talk about the number of diagnoses, long list of diagnoses codes and long list of external cause codes. Those were always interesting. But for that one, I think it was 50 questions, and then it was case studies. So I had to go through those case studies, and I had to go through the 50 questions. And again, some of those were HIPAA questions, some of them were the OIG questions. They told me that I could use the book, and they told me that I could use online resources. They wanted to see how well I used my resources. That was part of the test. And then, of course, getting the test correct was a huge part of it. But when you are taking these tests, sometimes it will give you time to do them. And they'll tell you, okay, make sure that you have it done within 24 hours, or we'll give you 48 hours to get it done. And then you turn it in. And if they're asking you to have 80%, that's, they're giving you a lot of slack if they're asking for 80%. Because I think that for these other two, it was a lot higher. So it really all depends. Some, they ask for 90% of them to be correct in order for you to be like, okay, well, we're going to look at this person. Because when they're looking at brand new people, they're looking at, if they're going to give you a chance, they want somebody that is not going to require a lot of training. So if you are strong with medical terminology, if you're strong with anatomy, this is not somebody that is going to have so much trouble understanding what they're reading. A lot of times with brand new medical coders, what happens when I've trained is I've been able to tell somebody who took medical terminology and anatomy and somebody who didn't, or somebody who had a very short course, because then I could tell just by the way that they were selecting codes. And I'm like, this is the wrong direction. Let's go this way. And so I had to kind of show them how to do that. Having a good medical dictionary goes a long way. I do recommend Dorland's Medical Dictionary if you're going to go into any of those. The flashcards that I am going to recommend are from Mosby's. I do like theirs. That's the one that I used before. I also used Barron's. Barron's is also really good, but I do have the 2 links for Mosby's. And then I have Exploring Medical Language, a student-directed approach. So that's more of a, it's more of like the colloquial way of doing things, like something that we can all understand versus something that seems like it's really advanced. But again, when you're concentrating on those prefixes, suffixes, and root words, and the website that I do recommend, I'm going to leave that link in the description box. But it's Global something. I really like that one. Global RPH. And again, I'm going to be leaving that in the description box. That is how I do a lot of my own personal study too. If I have to go back and kind of recall a lot of those things, it's a really good way to kind of refresh your memory. And then you can make flashcards for like the prefixes, suffixes, and root words. So that way you're learning parts of the word. So that way when you see a huge word, you can piece it all together. I don't remember the word anymore, but the guy at the recruiter at the second school that I went to, when I was interviewing medical coding schools, he wrote out this big word, and he's like, well, what does that mean? And I was able to say it was like ear, nose, and throat doctor or something like that. And he's like, well, how did you know that? He's like, have you had, because he was writing out all these words, and I was able to pick them all up. And he's like, well, how did you know that? He goes, nobody knows these. And then I said, well, I just pieced together parts of the word. I said, I'm a reader. He goes, do you have background already in medical? Like, no. No, trust me. I said, I was far from medical even before getting into this. I know nothing about this. But I've always been a reader. So, that's not something that's foreign to me. He's like, because nobody gets these. And then he's like, well, I hope you pick our school. But I didn't pick that school because the first thing they tried to sell me was on the money. And so when you're picking schools, and not that this has anything to do with medical terminology and anatomy, but if you're out there, when you're picking a school and they immediately start selling you on how much money a medical coder can make, that's when you need to run. Because they should be telling you first what they're going to teach you. So that way you have an idea of what this school is about. They reveal a lot when they're interviewing you. Because if they start telling you, did you know that medical coders can work at home and you could be with your family and you could make X amount of money and you could do all these things to give you this really high, ridiculous starting salary, which is never true. So it's just like, really? And when I hear all these things that these people go through, it breaks my heart, because they hard sold medical coding to these people, and they're thinking that it's going to be one way, and it's actually going to be a completely different way. And people get discouraged when they find out how hard it actually is, that it's not an easy field. It's not even an easy field to get into. It's not even an easy field to learn. Because when you're learning medical terminology, again, that's where a lot of people get stuck. And so, like I said, and I'm always going to say this, if you break things down into manageable chunks, it's going to be less overwhelming. If you find ways to squirrel in study time, like listening to JJ Medicine, right? This is JJ Medicine, yeah. And you're just listening to all these conditions. And the guy's voice is not that bad, okay? I know sometimes on some of these, you can get to where you're listening and it's just like, you know. But with this guy, you're listening, you're paying attention, because he's saying exactly the same thing. Now, I have no affiliation with this website at all, other than the fact that I came across it. I was like, this is perfect for what I want to tell my audience, you know. And they've done all these really nice videos talking about everything. I mean, this is perfect if you're going to get into family practice, even, or even if you're going to get into one of the specialty clinics. It is really a good thing. And there's hundreds of videos on here. I mean, literally, as I scroll down to look and see everything that they have, I mean, they have everything, you know, integumentary, they have gastro, they have cardio, they've got all of this. And it's amazing, all of these things that you see here. And I'm just like, you know, even I just want to like, but again, very interesting stuff. This is a website, or this is a channel worth subscribing to. Hi, Jerry. Oh, it's Jerry, everybody. Thank you for the blue heart. I've missed you too. You've been not here. I've talked about you a few times, but you have not been here. I'm so glad you're back. Julia says, I loved terminology, my favorite part. Sarah says, Quizlet has free quizzes for terminology. That's true. I always forget about Quizlet. Brianna, just started my medical coding class. Now we are currently going through having to find at least 10 to 20 combination of elements for each term. Is it better to use cards or a notebook? That depends on how portable you want to be. If you want to be truly portable, you can go with the note cards. Go to the Dollar Tree and get a deck of the note cards. And that way you get the one, you don't have to have them lined if you don't want to. You can have them both blank sides, and then just use like a hole puncher and get one of those key rings, and then that way you can flip them and you don't lose any of them. That's just a suggestion. If you want a notebook, that is totally fine too, because writing it down, the goal is to write it down. So when you're writing things down, it's easier to absorb into your mind and your memory. Yes, Jerry, you are going to have to catch up on videos, but I'm glad you're back. But yes, so when you're writing things down, and that's another study tip too. When you're writing things down, whether you are using flashcards or whether you are using a notebook, it is going to commit to memory a lot easier. When I was in theater arts, when I was in school, that was how I memorized my lines. My memory was a lot better back then, where I could absorb a lot. Now I have to kind of work on my memory a little bit to remember things. But when you're writing things down, it does help, because seeing it versus just being on a phone and using like an app or something and then doing one of those. People were telling me, oh yeah, Blue, I found this app that it's medical terminology flashcards. I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. But you're still missing out on that part where you're writing it down and you're able to commit it to memory. Because sitting there staring at a screen in your phone, you of course get a lot of exposure to that blue light. And if you can turn it off on your phone, of course that would be best for your eyes. But it's always a good thing to take a break from the electronics. That's the best way too, because when you're having to look at these books and you're having to sit down and write these cards out and make these flashcards, it does kind of give you a break from all that. So that way you don't have to burn your eyes out as far as like make them tired, or, you know, you're just so tired of looking at the screen all the time. Flashcards are another fun way to get others involved. If you have a study partner, or if you're a parent and you have your kids and they won't leave you alone, have them hold the cards for you. Challenge your kids to these flashcards, and then make it a game. You know, it's a win-win because the kids are going to learn something too. And it's also a win-win if you're trying to study and your kids keep hassling you, trying to get you to play with them, and then they're like, oh, I don't want to sit here and do flashcards. You go ahead and do your flashcard thing. And they go off and do their own thing. It's a good way to incorporate them, get them involved, because believe it or not, your family sometimes does want to get involved. And kids love to help, you know. Sometimes they say, well, I can't concentrate, you know, because they're doing all of these things. But if you say, hey, can you help me? Sometimes kids are more willing to say, oh yeah, I'll help you. And even if you get that half an hour with them to have that bonding time, you don't feel as bad, right? Because you're spending time studying. And I always tell parents out there, don't feel bad for studying a new field, because this is something that is going to benefit not just yourself, but your family as well. So it is a responsible thing to do. It's not irresponsible. It's not selfish. It is responsible. So think of it like that. And you're going to do something great, and your kids, while sometimes they may not understand what you're doing when you're sitting there with your medical terminology in front of you, they may not understand it now if they're little. They may not understand it if they're teenagers, but later on they'll get it, especially when you're working in the field later and they say, wow, you really did all that. Yeah, you know, because you never know, you may be somebody's role model or inspiration to be able to do things, because kids are going to be watching everything you do. Even family members are going to be watching everything that you do. You can inspire your other family members. It doesn't necessarily have to be your kids. It could be your siblings, you know, into doing something like that. You know, I have family members that have told me, wow, I want to go back to school because of you. So do it. Go back to school. Learn something, you know. It doesn't necessarily have to be medical coding, but it does have to be something, because guys, you can turn on the TV at any given moment and you can see a story about somebody who that's it for them. And did they do everything that they wanted to do? And were they able to accomplish everything that they wanted? And if that's where you are, where you're kind of stuck and you don't know, guys, the best thing that you can do is just go for it. If you don't go for it now, you know, you're always going to kind of be waiting and, you know, oh, well, I never was disciplined enough. Yes, you are. And anybody and everybody can be disciplined if they want to. If you want to do something, you want to learn this, you want to learn medical terminology, you don't want it to be such a chore, you'll be able to do it. Putting yourself into those situations where you're listening to the words, you're exposing your mind and your brain to everything that you need to in order to start absorbing that. I spent a lot of time not just doing the channels and not just doing work, but actually spending time with these books so that I can learn more, so that my coding can get better. Even still today, I'm still looking to make my coding better. So that's the mindset you have to get into. It's not a 24-hour-a-day deal, okay, guys? Don't panic. I always get that comment afterwards. You mean I got to give up my life and I got to do that? No. But what you do have to do is get on a schedule and get disciplined. Make time for those flashcards, make time for that medical terminology, and after a while, it will start to come to you. Be like, oh yeah, okay, I got this. This is what I'm saying. Yep, but the writing, like Mitney says, is true. Because when you start writing things down, you're able to recall things. I can't tell you how many times I've trained new providers who come in and they have a horrible copy forward habit. And I'll be able to recall just because I read it and I saw it. I was like, okay, this was copy forwarded. This is not, you know, guys, come on, you know. So they're like, oh, I thought we could do that. No. Okay. When it comes to what we can and can't take from documentation, it's like this. You know, some things can be copy forwarded, but it has to have the proper citing on it. It has to be able to say that there's no changes and things like that. And that information has to be very limited. Okay, you still have to make sure that you are getting updated information. Just saying. And I know that's away from medical terminology, but it's kind of hard to not talk about these other things when you're talking about medical terminology. Because looking at these words all day, oh yeah. But give yourself adequate breaks, okay, whatever you do. Don't study it so hard that you burn out. That's the worst thing you can do. Like I said, you have that half an hour on the drive to work, half an hour on drive home. That's an hour, guys, at minimum. That's 5 hours during the weekday. And I always recommend, if you are working a full-time job, 40 hours a week, well, Blue, how much time should I study? A minimum of 20 hours. Well, I don't have that much time. You made me break it down for you? So you can do 10 hours during the week. Again, you got an hour that you're in the car, and you got an hour that you can do before or after work. That's 2 hours, so that's 10 hours. Now you got the weekend. 5 hours on Saturday, 5 hours on Sunday. Boom. 20 hours in 1 week. There you go. The more time you spend with it like that, that's structured, the better. So that way you can be like, oh, okay. But I'm just saying that as a general sense. You don't necessarily have to do it every day. But if you're doing at least a minimum of 20 hours, even if you're working a full-time 40-hour work week job, it's still doable. It's still manageable. Take the time, guys. Get familiar with these words. And put those prefixes, suffixes, and root words on flashcards or in a notebook, so that way you can have it handy. You can do these games with your family, okay? That is just my recommendation. Make it as fun for you to learn as possible so that you can be engaged. For me, sometimes when I feel my engagement waning, I get a new book. And that'll spark the interest again, or I'll go on YouTube and look at something else. And that always sparks the interest then. So that's just another thing that I recommend. Sarah says, I agree with the structure in order to be more successful. It takes discipline. It does take discipline. When you are disciplined, it does give you more confidence when you're getting through, and you're like, okay, I've passed this goalpost, I've passed this goalpost, I've passed this goalpost. I've been able to do this, this, and this because I've stayed on it. I've been consistent. And if you slide one day and you say, well, I just didn't have time, or this happened or that happened, it's okay. Pick it up the next day and move on. Don't kick yourself. Well, I guess I already should give up on it. No, you shouldn't. You got to keep after it. Because when it comes to this is a long haul. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. I know some of these schools, they try to make it into a sprint. But it doesn't mean that you have to do that. Okay? Tracy says discipline and time management. That's right. Now you're looking at missed time management right here. I have to. And you know why? Because I think of my why. My why is you guys, right? When I'm here with you guys on YouTube and on Patreon, it's you guys. When I'm at work, it's my fellas over there. All my surgeons. That's my why. I want them to be the best. I want them to have the best. I want them to be the top performing, because they're all competitive. Aren't all medical coders competitive? But I want them to be at the top because it's legitimate. And obviously, if I work hard, it's going to reflect with them. And the fact that we can motivate each other because it is a team sport. They know that listening to me is important, because I tell them, guys, I just need you to listen to me. Any other coding advice you hear, I need you to kind of tune it out. I need you to get it from me. And they go, you got it, Blue. I don't want to hear from these other people. You're right. Don't listen to them, because you need to hear it from one voice, because you have too many chiefs and not enough Indians, and all of a sudden everything's out of control. But when you are a medical coder and that's your clinic and those are your providers, that's your why. Just saying. Thank you, Sarah. She says, we appreciate you for sharing your time with all of us. Well, you are welcome, and I'm happy to do it, because that's why I have my channel. is to touch that next generation of medical coders, hopefully to help the culture change a little bit. I always talk about studying on my channel because how important it is. I talk about having relationships with your providers because that's important too. And always standing up for yourself when it comes to these audits, and not just being pushed around because your auditor says, well, I said to do it this way. This is why I tell you guys, always bring your resources, bring your references, because not everybody knows the same things, okay? So that is something that you have to be aware of, especially when you're in this field. You have to be attention to detail. But yes, so did I get everybody's question? I think I did. Drea says your info is always so good. Oh, thank you, Drea. I appreciate that. All right, so I'm gonna leave those links, and the links for global. Is it global? What is the name of that? Global RPH. That's one of my favorite ones. That's for the prefixes, suffixes, and root words. And then on the affiliate links, I have a link for the muscular skeletal system. Is a giant chart. I think the more that you have it in front of you, the better when you're looking at the illustrations. And always look in the back of your, if you have the Optum 360 ICD-10 CM coding book. This is the PCS book. I don't know, does it have it in here? But the appendixes do have wonderful illustrations, I know, in the ICD-10 CM book, the diagnosis book. But I think, do they have it in here? No? I thought they do. Okay, so in Appendix A, if you have the Optum 360 ICD-10 PCS book, it does have color templates in it, like the plates, the anatomy plates. Oh, it's just those three? Oh, well, it talks about like the different approaches and what they look like and stuff. So there's some illustrations in here, and then there's illustrations throughout the book as well. If you guys are looking for a sale on books, Optum 360 Coding, this is not an ad for them, but got a plug for them. 80% off for the 2021 editions, 40% off for the 2022 editions if you order now. So I will leave the link for Optum 360 Coding in the description box below. Go to Medical Coding Specialty, right, or Medical Specialty Coding, and then you click that box. It's in the middle when you go to the website. It's right in the middle. Click on that, and it will say Best Deals, and that is the link for the sale. So that way you can check out all the books that you want to. If you are taking your exam this year, this is the best time to buy because the 2021 books are on sale. I got the 2021 ICD-10 PCS book for $24 and some change. So yes, this is the best time to buy. Even though we are in an expensive field, it doesn't have to be expensive if you get smart, okay? So get smart with your resources. Use the free resources that are online. Go to websites like justcoding.com. I will always plug for them. This is not an ad for them, but justcoding.com. They do have a free subscription and a paid subscription. The free subscription will give you access to free coding quizzes. There are 5-question coding quizzes. Yes, they do have the answers. They have 4 options for the answers. Just make sure that you cover that up so that way you can practice looking up whatever the diagnosis is or the procedure for the CPT or the ICD-10 PCS. Look it up in your book and then see if that is an option in the answers. So that way you're not getting too dependent at looking at the answers. You are actually getting practice looking it up in the book. At least that's my advice anyway. And what else do I have here? Mosby's, and then of course JJ Medicine, and then of course Medicare Learning Network. That's just another thing that you guys can learn from too as well, and I will be leaving that in the description box below. All right, what do we have here? Maximus says, I got 48 out of 50 on a practice test 2 through AAPC. That is awesome. That is so awesome. That's good. Getting lots of congratulations. Tracy says, I do have those books. Drea, great job. Tracy, I don't have the PCS book. That's the one I got for $24. The 2021 edition though. Maxima says, not that looks matter, but I want to tell you that you look lovely with your hair pulled back. Oh, thank you. I don't know why, but for some reason, and maybe because of the rain, because we've been kind of having like off and on rain. My hair has just been kind of like all over the place. So I said, let me slick it back and I'll work with it that way rather than having it stand up because there was a lot of static on it earlier. Do they time you for these pre-employment tests, says Nancy? No, a lot of times they don't. They're not holding you on a clock. But I have seen somebody say that they had 4 hours to do their test. So they do give you time, but every single one that I have done, there was not time on it. They just told me to get it back to them within 24 hours. One was 48 hours. So, yes, but that's my answer on that one. So if there are no other questions, is there any other questions? Have you subscribed to my channel yet? Have you liked this? Have you shared it with all the people that you know? Seriously, guys, like this because it helps with the YouTube algorithm. I do not do anything else to supplement my videos other than share them with all of you. So this is us all together. We are at 13,000, a little over 500, about to hit 600. So thank you all for your support. I really appreciate it. It means everything to me. Getting the word out about my channel is great. Thank you for sharing it. If you have shared it with your class, if you're in school, I really do appreciate it because there's a lot of information out there. And if you want information that is, I'm not selling you anything. I'm just here to give you guys the real deal. That is what I do. So hopefully it will reach more and more people. I thank my school for using one of your videos as a discussion. Oh, thank you. That is so awesome. When I hear that, somebody told me that the other day too, that one of the videos that I had was something that they had used for a discussion too. I was like, oh, that's cool. But like I said, I do these because there's a lot of information out there and some of it's not always delivered in the most selfless way. A lot of it is, there's some of it that is self-serving. There's nothing self-serving here other than I'm just giving you guys information. So, and hopefully being a little entertaining about it too. That was me. Okay, yeah. But no, I have heard it before from another viewer, but they had emailed me. But yes, I know it was you. Yeah, it was you. Because we had this conversation the other day too. I think it was for the abstracting and auditing. Yeah, abstracting versus auditing. I looked back at that one. I was like, oh, that was back in the day. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. This was a lot of fun. I hope that you will review those resources that I will leave in the description box below. And I will see y'all on the next episode. Bye.